Okay, so with only a short amount of time left from Tisha B'Av, the avodah and the focus shifts. And we need to understand what that shift is, because it's not a one-off. What we need to understand, and this is actually critically important, and I'll explain in a minute how critical this is. If we don't get this right, then it puts our Yomim Noiroyim in jeopardy. I'll explain. It's really not that difficult to understand. We've had Shloisha de Parunusa. We've had 3 weeks associated with the bad things that have happened to us. And now we start now a new period, Shiva de Nechemta, 7 weeks where the Haftorahs, that means the theme is all about Nechama. And that takes us directly to Rosh Hashana. And those of you that know about deeper thought know that this configuration, the 3 and the 7, is not coincidental, of course. That means that in the eyes of Chazal, the bridge, the way that we arrive at a Rosh Hashanah as we should, is within the perspective of this new thing, which is going to be the primary theme for the next 7 weeks, Nechama. Nechama, we need to get Nechama right. Whatever it is, we need to understand it. We need to achieve it. And that takes us to Rosh Hashanah. And we, obviously, we ignore Chazal at our peril. We can't afford to ignore them. This is the way that we get from this part of the year. This is the way you want to arrive at a Rosh Hashanah properly. It's via one thing only, Shiva de Nechemta, Elul, all of this we forget. People forget. You don't hear many, in yeshivas, and you don't hear a lot of shmuzin about this. You hear plenty about the Paranusa, the terrible things that happened. Unfortunately, we are no strangers to Tsaros. We understand, we know Tsaros very well. No, we don't need lecturing about Tsaros. But Nechama is something much more subtle. It's not clear. And Chazal are telling us this is the way that you arrive in Rosh Hashanah. And with that started now. That started now. We say about the Rabbeinu Shalom in Kaddish, we say Le'ela min kol birchosa v'shirasa tushbechasa v'nechemasa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Le'ela. He is above any praise, that I understand. He's above any brachas, that I understand. But there's one word there that doesn't seem to fit in. Le'ela mikol shirasa, birchosa v'shirasa, tushbechasa v'nechemasa. The Rabbeinu Shalom is Le'ela. He is Baal HaYeshuos u'Baal HaNechamos. What on earth does that mean? So the sugya, really what should be taking up our minds for the next few weeks is the understanding of this concept, of this word, what it means, how we apply it, because it seems that is the bridge, that is the derech through to Elul. So let's start by, first of all, understanding what happened, what just took place in this Tisha B'Av, the most strange thing, the most bizarre thing. And to really emphasize how strange it is, I want to tell you a Tosfos in Tanis, which isn't always Negeya in Tisha B'Av, but it's Negeya this year. That's your clue. Tosfos in Tanis, Daf Lamed, says as follows. Heicha dechol Tisha B'Av behei b'Shabbos. Like this year. Tisha B'Av falls on Thursday. Muta lechabes ulesaper mechatzois ve'elech mipnei kvod HaShabbos. This afternoon, at 12 minutes past 1, according to Tosfos, we could have a shower, could wash our clothes, We could have a haircut. As I said, Tosfos. De'ein lahamtin ad Erev Shabbos. Says Tosfos, I'm going to wait till Erev Shabbos. R Shabbos. Erev Shabbos, a busy day. Shopping, I don't know what, preparing for Shabbos. It's ein lahamtin, the cheshbon of not waiting. Torah HaShabbos outweighs the Avelos, and you could really wash your clothes and have a haircut this afternoon from Chatzos, according to Tosfos. Frag the Beis Yosef, I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense, says the Beis Yosef. And he is doicha. He says we don't accept this shitta lahalocha. You've read the document I gave out. You know that there are some kulas from tonight, from tomorrow. We won't go into the details. Of course, there are some leniencies b'pnei Kovod Shabbos. But you see something fascinating. Tosfos was prepared, Tosfos was paskening, that we could, on Tisha B'Av. What happened? How can that be? How do we understand that? And Tosfos is very clear, but that's only after Chatzos. So something happens at Chatzos. And that's clear. It's what is slightly unclear is whether it has to do with Chatzos or it has to do with Mincha or Tfilas HaMincha. That's a little bit less clear in the poskim. Whether you sit on a high chair, for example, is that after Kinnis, or is that only from Chatzos? Is that only from the Zman Tfilas HaMincha? But something definitely happens. The Issa Melacha. So, for example, I'm going to mention it now. You remember it for next year. But the idea is that we are not Mesiach Das. There's a din of Hesach Hadas. Not to distract ourselves. Up until Chatzos, there are no leniencies to do anything other than say Kinnis. There's no heta. You can't go to work. You can't write emails. You can't do anything. There's a din of Avelus that is so intense. It's like Meisoi Mutter Lefonov. We mentioned it this morning. Meisoi Mutter Lefonov. It's as if the person that we are being misabel for has not been buried, and therefore there's no Hesach Hadas. You can't do anything. What happens now? What happened at Chatzos or Zman Tfilas HaMincha is there was the equivalent of Kavura. And now a whole new thing starts. And now for the first time, a new element in Hilchas Avelus is revealed. The Mishnah tells us, and we know, don't be menachem and ovel b'shah shemeisoi mutar lefonov. It is inappropriate, it is wrong, it is cruel to be menachem ovel before the kvura. There's no nichum avelim before the kvura. There is only tsar. What happened at Chatzos, the shift, the switch, was that we shifted from a position of having Meisei Mutar Lefonov, that the equivalent of there being a kvura, it's final. The Beis HaMikdash is gone. And this is the irony always. That this we know, this was the moment in time, Chazal tell us that the Beis HaMikdash was set ablaze. The fire was started in the afternoon, in fact, even towards evening, on Tisha B'Av, and that's at the very moment that we lighten Avelus. That's the moment that we start this new process, which involves Nechama. I don't think it's a coincidence. I just want to give you something to think about. I have some ideas, but I don't want to. It's no coincidence that the words Nechama and Mincha are exactly the same. It cannot be a coincidence, and I have some thoughts about that, but just something for you to chew on, to think about a little bit. So what are the reasons? There are three different possible reasons brought in the poskim as to why this shift. I mentioned one of them already. What happens at Chatzos? The Vilna Gaon in Bir Agra in Tovkuf Nun Hey says because that was the moment in time, like I said, that was the moment in time the Beis HaMikdash was set ablaze. And the fact that the Rebbeinu Shel Olam poured out his anger al eitzim va'al avonim and not on Klal Yisrael is a sign of his love for us, and therefore it is appropriate to lighten the Avelus slightly. There's an incredible Chazal, a Medrash, which says that there were 3 occasions in history when the Malachim wanted to say Shira and HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them not to. The Mabul, Kriyas Yamsuf, and B'Shas HaChurban. The Malachim wanted to sing Shira B'Shas HaChurban, and the depth of the Pshat is that they and only they could recognize that what really was happening was the greatest chesed and rachamim and ahava. And therefore it was legitimate for them to say Shira. It was the best thing for us, even though it was something we could not comprehend. So Hashem had to say, but still, you still can't say Shira because of the way it's being understood and perceived in down here. That's one pshat. The Ritva says, Meisei mutalafana, what I mentioned to you before, and therefore, beforehand you're an einan, and it is forbidden to be meisiach das, to be distracted. But once after chatzos, it is as if the meis has had kvura, and therefore the next stage of avelus can start and nechama can start. And the Go'inim bring, the Eitzar Go'inim bring a very interesting minhag. It seems there was a minhag in Mitzrayim from Chatzos on Tisha B'Av to start wearing leather shoes again. And the Go'inim, they bring it in the Eitzar Go'inim. Me'eze tam hitiru b'Mitzrayim ne'ilas hasandal b'Tisha B'Av mechatzos. And the answer is, they explain in Eitzar Go'inim is something to do with, in Avelus there is a concept of Miktsas Hayoim Kukuloi, which is very strange, because we say Miktsas Hayoim Kukuloi, it's not Chatzos, it's the beginning of, it's the first part of a day. But maybe a pshat is, the Gemara says the Miktsas Hayoim Kukuloi is the first opportunity for Menachamim to come, and then when Komu HaMenachamim, the first opportunity in a day, when people can come to give you Nechama, and then they get up and they go, that's when Miktsas Hayom Kukuloi kicks in. And for us, on Tisha B'Av, that's only at Chatzos, because only then is Nechama possible, only B'Shas HaMincha. Fine. But let's begin to understand in a little bit more detail. Let's talk a little bit about this concept, Nechama, because that's really important. The first time we find Nechama, we find it in the end of Parshas Bereishis. When the Rebbeinu Shel Olam has created man, and then, where's it gone? Keviochel, he changes his mind. Ki nichamti ki asisim. And it's very important. Let's listen to the psukim. It's really important to understand this. Vayar Hashem ki rabo roas ha'odam ba'oretz. Hashem saw that man was doing a lot of bad things. V'chol yetze machshavos liboy rak kol hayoim. And everything, all his thoughts were bad, were evil. Vayinochem Hashem ki oso es ha'odam ba'oretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol changed his mind. Vayinochem Hashem. Vayemer Hashem, and Hashem says, Emcha es ha'odam asher barosim al pnei ha'adama. So what does he say? He says, I'm going to wipe out man. But then, the most amazing thing happens. Listen to this. One Sedra later in Parshas Noach, so Noach goes into the Teva, and he goes through everything, the avodah he has to go through in the Teva, and he comes out, a changed man, and he brings, Vayiven Noach Mizbeach LaHashem. Noach builds a Mizbeach, and he brings Karbonos. Vayorach Hashem es reach anichoyach. What does it says? Hashem, whatever it means, he smells the Karbonos. Vayomer Hashem eliboy, and Hashem says, Loi oisif oid lekalel es oid es ha'adama ba'avur ha'odam. I will no longer curse man. I won't bring a mabul again. Do you know why? Ki yetzer leiv ha'odam ra min urav. Because man has evil thoughts, and his yetzer makes him bad from his youth. What's going on? The very thing, the very reason that served as the reason why Hashem said before, I'm going to destroy man, the same thing now is why he's saying, I will no longer destroy man, because people have bad machshavas, the yetzer leiv adam is ra. The same thing. The facts haven't changed. Man and the nature of man are the same. So what's changed? And this is what Nechama is. This is the important thing for us. What does Nechama mean? Nechama is the ability to look at the same set of facts and draw the opposite conclusion. That's Nechama. Nechama is the realization that there are some things in life that I can change. There are some things in life I'm not going to be able to change. But the one thing that I can change, in fact, the only thing that I can change, and therefore the only thing that I am responsible for, is my perspective. How do I view things? Until the moment of Churban, we have to understand, it's very difficult, but if you read the Nevi'im and you understand what was happening at the time, they thought this was an impossibility. The Beis HaMikdash was so central in their lives. It was so powerful. It was so dominant from the perspective of Torah and Avodah and everything. The Navi comes and says it's going to be destroyed. And what do? We put him in prison. That's what we do. Eicha is written, a lot of Eicha is written in a Jewish prison. When the Beis HaMikdash is on fire, when it is ablaze, when we realize, when we finally accept this is happening, this is final. Things can't get any worse. They can only get better. When the recognition and the realization begins to sink in, then Nechama can start. There is a tradition, minhagim, some of them go back older, women sweep the floor Tisha B'Av afternoon to prepare for Mashiach, and Tisha B'Av Noilad Mashiach, whatever that means. It means that this Nechama, this attitude of understanding what has happened and the way forward is only through us changing our perspective. So many times in life, so much of what we do in life, we try to be the boss, we want to be in control. And that's, on the one hand, it's normal, it's natural to want to be in control. But I think if this year has taught us anything, it has taught us how little control we really have. Walking away from now to Rosh Hashana, the process that starts now, Nachem Hashem, Rabbeinu Shalom is le'ela mikol berchosav shirasav v'nechemasa. He is able, like he demonstrated at the beginning, with Bereshis and Noach, to look at the same set of facts and draw opposite conclusions. And that's what we all need to do in our lives. We need to stop trying to change the facts, trying to change the realities. There are some things we can change and some things maybe we should change. But there are many, many, many things in life that we have no control over. We might think we'd like to have control over them. Then what we need to do is to stop kvetching and to start accepting the things that cannot be changed. And that frees up our mind and our heart to look at everything differently. And then an incredible thing happens. we recognize and we realize the Rebbeinu Shalom runs the world. That is the Nechama that we need. We need to change our perspectives on realities and stop trying to control the things which we're not really in control of, and instead focus all of the time and the energy and the resources that we have to control the things that we are responsible for. Ourselves, our avodah, our tefillah, our midas, our yiras shamayim. Those are the things that's our world. The Nechama is to stop spending so much time and frustrated energy in focusing outwards and to start focusing inwards. Rachel Imeinu, this is not often appreciated. It was one of the Mirror Rosh Yeshivas, used to take his Talmidim Tisha B'Av afternoon to Kever Rachel. And his Mekoyer to this was a Tosfos Rabbeinu Peretz in Psochim. There's a machlokes there in the Gemara in Psochim about if you were a sophic whether you made a mistake in tefillah or not, whether you go back or not. And Rabbi Yochanan says about Tisha B'Av, the famous words, they're quite famous words that people don't always realize that they relate specifically to Tisha B'Av. Halavai sheyispalel kol hayom kuloi. Halavai, we should daven the entire day. And according to many of the Rishonim, that is referring specifically to Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av was a day of tefillah. Says Tosfos Rabbeinu Peretz, v'zel l'shoinoi, d'chiven de Tisha B'Av hu eis lemefush berachamim ubetachanunim. Tisha B'Av is a time for us to daven and to ask for the binyan Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, choshiv zeh k'moi sofik lo hispalel d'kishar yimos hashana. It's the equivalent of a sofek in the rest of the year. It is different. Halavai sheyispalel kol hayom kuloi. Let's just take one lesson. B'shas the Churban, Rachel Imeinu, about which it says, Mea noli hinochem al boneha. Spoke about it this morning. She refuses to accept Nechama. She makes us cry. Rachel mevako al boneha. She makes us cry. But she, it seems, has a unique zchus. What is her zchus? The Rebbeinu Shalom accepts her cries and her tears. There's something unique about her. What is the unique about her, which we can learn from? Says the Medrash, it's a famous Medrash, but there's two Medrashim I want to put together. Medrash in the Psicha of Eicha, that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the Avos came to the Rebbeinu Shalom, Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and Moshe Rabbeinu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't listen to them. And the Baskoil came out and said, Gzeiro hi milefonai. I've decided it's too late. You can cry, you can daven, however great you are. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, nothing doing. Koftza Rachel Imeinu lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rachel Imeinu jumps. Very interesting lashon. She jumps in front of Hashem. And she reminds Hashem of what she did by handing over the Simonim to Leah so that her sister Leah shouldn't be shamed. And in that zechus, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should not subject us, his children, to such shame. Miyad nizgalgelu rachmav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu immediately has rachamim. What happened? It was a gzeira. What happened? And he says, B'shvilcha rochel ani machzer Yisrael mekoymon. In your zechus, there will be a way back. There is a way back in your zechus. V'shavu bonim ligvulam. Kol barama nishma. V'shavu banim legvulam v'yesh tzacha lepulasech. You, Rachel, not Avram, not Yitzchak, not Yaakov. Interesting. It comes to Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur in a few weeks' time. We're going to daven and we'll mention the Akedah. We'll mention all sorts of things. We don't mention this. This is a unique sort of zechus. Rashi brings this in Yirmiyah, slightly different, and Rashi says, when Menashe was ma'amid selem beheichal. Menashe, can you imagine what that means? A king, a Jewish king, puts an avodah zarah in the Beis Hamikdash. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is enraged. Again, the Avos and the Mois go to be Mefayes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, V'loi nispayes. He doesn't accept Nechama. Nichnasa Rachel, Amra lefanav Rabbeinu shel Olam. She says, Rabbeinu shel Olam, I know how you feel. Ani hichnasti tzarosi l'soich beisi. I brought my sister, my rival, into my house. I know what it feels like. Menashe's put a tzelem in your heichal. I can empathize with you. I took my sister and gave her the simonim. That level of vitur, that level of giving in, is what leads to Nechama. That's the unique zechus. So the avodah that starts now and goes from now and needs to intensify. If we'll get time, hopefully we'll speak on T Beav is the Yom Tov of Nechama. And it intensifies one after the other. We have 7 haftorahs. You should read them, understand them, learn them. Starting from this week, Nachamu, Nachamu, the double expression of Nechama. And we look at our situation and we realize how difficult our situation is, how impossible our situation is. But we realize that with us and with our story, nothing is ever impossible. V'shavu banim ligvulam, we will go back. Rabbi Akiva sees the nevuah, one nevuah being niskayim. He says, I know the other one is going to be niskayim. Why? Because the two were connected. The Gemara says we connected the two. The avodah for the next few weeks, therefore, is the ability to ask ourselves the following question. Which bits of my life do I really control? Which things do I really control? And which things would I like to control? I'd like to control. These are the bits which perhaps frustrate me and annoy me. And I'd like them to be in my control. And I spend so much of my time and my energy and frustration trying to control them. And every minute I spend on those things is a minute I'm not spending on what really matters, on my own real avodah, the things that I really need to control. Nechama, we have to turn it round, we have to change it. We have to change our focus. We do not change the facts. The facts remain what they are. We have to shift our focus. The Rabbeinu Shel Olam shows the way. He is le'ela mikol nechamasa. He can look at the same set of facts and say, this is going to be a reason now for me not to destroy man. He's Baal HaNechamos. And that is the avodah, that is the derech, that is the mahalach, the journey that takes us to Rosh Hashanah. The challenge, therefore, is to realize that to arrive through an Elul and a Rosh Hashanah without undergoing Nechama is not possible. To the extent that we are able to take away, hopefully, from this, Tisha B'Av should be our last, to start the process. Remember, there's only 3 weeks of Puranos, there's 7 of Nechama. There's a lot of time, and the theme is all Nechama. That means it's an avodah. It's not easy. It's something that takes a lot of energy and effort, but that is the avodah. We started it Chatzos today at the depth and the intensity of the Avelus. We got up. Remember, according to Tosfos, we could have had a shower this afternoon. We don't paskin like that. But this avodah starts now. And we'll know, hopefully, by the time we hear Tkiyas Shofar, whether we've managed. Hopefully we'll know whether to the extent that we've managed to work on our Nechamas, the Rabbeinu Shalom should be Menachem Tzion U'Beinei Yerushalayim.